everyone. I'm so blessed to be here to join you this evening. If you were on earlier, you would have seen Minister Peterson. If you did not catch her, her handle is at MINKL Peterson. I know she brought an awesome word, and so definitely catch her on the replay. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're doing our Preaching in Pink, but today is what we are calling Testimony Friday. And I think it's fitting with this being the last day of the month. And I'm so grateful for those who watch and who've been following and who interact. So I'm taking this time a little bit to just tell kind of a little bit of my story, my testimony, things, how I started out, how this journey has been for me. And my prayer is that someone can be inspired, someone can be touched, someone can know that they're not the only one that was in this predicament or has gone through these trials or these tribulations, that they too can go through these, but always there's a purpose. And so for me, today's topic is, if you've seen it, is hunted at conception. And I know it can be a jolt when seeing that topic. You're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? When I was younger and coming up, the book of Job is a book that for some reason that I always really loved. I could read that particular book of the Bible all the time, and I would just be amazed at how many of the things that Job was doing or saying, I was doing and saying myself in my life, because I couldn't understand what the purpose for me going through the trials and the tribulations that I was going through in reference to being on earth. And so when I say hunted at conception, it was like if you go to Job, the first chapter in verse 8, and the enemy, the devil, was saying, you know what? I don't have anybody. Who can I, mess with? Who can I come after? And God said, have you considered my servant Job? And the devil was like, please, if you take everything from him, he's definitely going to curse you. He's going to die. He's not going to continue to follow you. And so therefore, God allowed him to strip him of everything. But he said, you cannot touch his life. You cannot touch his life at all. You could take everything else, but his life belongs to me. And so after I'd gone through counseling sessions and really began to deal with a lot of the traumas that I dealt with, I reflected back on the book of Job and why I loved it so. So it was like the enemy said, hey, I want to test her. And she's not on this earth yet, but I am going to make her life a living hell from the time conception is thought of, so that she will never serve you. And when I think on it, from the time I've stepped foot on this earth and was birthed onto this earth, it's been crazy. It's been, ups and downs, whatever. So for most who do not know my story, I am a survivor of child physical abuse and sexual abuse, and I'm also a domestic violence survivor. My mother was a heroin addict from the time, from what I know now, from the time in which she was 14 or 15 years old. And we have an older brother who was taken from her because of her drug use. And we know there's another sister out there who was also taken because of her drug abuse. With her taking drugs, between me and my younger brother, we've had health issues. We have other, physical issues. She was also very abusive. So What a lot of people didn't know at the time was my mother, at the age of 5, my mother was very involved in heroin. And at the age of 5, I remember it was the day that I learned that sex was a means to an end, that there was no emotion to it, and women couldn't be trusted. It was the day that my mother decided that she didn't have cash to pay for her drugs. And so that day I became her currency. And hence went up, just a downward spiral of my existence that I knew. It became a spirit was entered into me that was at that age I had not been prepared for. When they say, children should grow up and learn and be nurtured, that is true. Why there's a reason why we are protected. We're supposed to be protected from certain things while we're allowed to grow. There's a reason why things, shouldn't happen before puberty. There's a reason why you should be in a committed relationship or marriage before entering into intimate contact. Now, please do not take me saying that I'm judging anyone who has done the opposite, because I have. So I'm not judging you. What I'm saying is that I understand what my grandmother was now saying about why these things, there's a process to these things. And so what happened was that day there became a spiritual battle between good and evil that erupted within me, and I didn't know how to fight it, because at the age of 5, I'm not equipped emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually to fight that battle. And so it went on for many years, and eventually we were taken, but only to be taken to then be abused by others. And so I had a really jaded view of God. I loved him. I understood. I love, praising and worship. I love reading the word, but I couldn't understand why these things were allowed to happen. And so I began to question a lot about what God was doing in my life. And as a young age, as I'm still developing, I didn't understand a lot. So right after high school, I graduated high school in about June of '93. And that November, my mother died. And they said it was pneumonia related, but I know she had been a heroin and needle user all her life. We know that she died from, HIV and AIDS. And when that happened, that is when my spiral began to happen, because now I felt that I would no longer be able to get the answers to the questions that I needed, that I deserved those answers, and now I was being robbed. So therefore, I began to do any and everything that I was bad enough to do. I was such in a deep hole, in a dark hole, that I knew committing suicide would be wrong. So what I did was I put myself in situations praying that someone would do it for me, so that my family wouldn't have the burden of saying, oh, this is how she left. And I didn't understand that even in that, God was covering me. God had told Satan, you can do all these things to her, but you cannot have her life. Her life belongs to me. So in that process, I was in the ministry, still doing things, not understanding fully, but I loved praise and worship. I loved ministering through song. It was something that just brought me great joy. But I had this deep, dark hole that I thought I covered. And then, I went from being a battered and abused child to a battered and abused teenager to a battered and abused young adult to a battered and abused wife and girlfriend. And not all of it was physical. A lot of it was emotionally. I was so emotionally damaged. There was no self-esteem. There was no love. People would tell me all the time, you're so pretty, you're so talented. I didn't believe that stuff. because I never had the, fortification of that growing up. Now, my grandmother, what I can tell you when I say that is a praying woman, she was a praying woman. She was a praying woman, and she covered me and I didn't even know it. When she was holding me close, I thought she was smothering me. When she was giving me advice, I thought it was just too much. And she passed the year before my mother passed. That was in 92. And it was like 5 years ago that I began to understand what her prayers were for, that she was covering me all the way. And as I began to seek counseling, because I, at that point, 5 years ago, had a complete break. It was like, I love God and I go to church or whatever, but they were making me feel guilty to say, well, if you serve God, you don't need to go see a therapist, or you don't need to go speak to somebody. That should all be, you should just continue to pray more. And I just said, you know what? I can't believe that. I can't believe that God has given people this knowledge and this, insight to help others. I can't believe that we're not supposed to use them. That's like saying that I have, a bad heart, and because I'm a Christian or, a Muslim or a Hindu, whatever, your religious pattern is or foundation is, that I should forego things based on that, unless that is what the belief is. So what I did was, with my asthma, I'm an asthmatic, I'm a chronic asthmatic. I don't sit up there and say, well, you know what, I'm going to continue to pray while I can't breathe. And I said, I decided to take that same action with my mental health. And once I did that and I began to talk with a therapist, I remember the day, my first appointment, and she was, so sweet, and she got it. She had worked with people who had been abused sexually and physically. She had, was a domestic violence advocate. She had worked with organizations that I'm familiar with. So I was very comfortable with her. But, you have a psychotherapist, which is the person you speak to, and then you have a psychiatrist, which is the one that you can give you the prescriptions for your medication. And, the psychiatrist came in and he was talking to me, and he was asking me, had you ever been on medicine? And I said, yeah, they used to give me Valium all the time as a kid. I didn't think anything of it. And he said, well, you've never been in counseling, you've never done. And I said, no, they didn't do any of those things. They just handed me the pills and was like, take these and you should be fine. And what he said to me was, I'm not going to give you medication right now, not because you don't need it. He says, the reason I'm not going to give it to you is because I don't have a solid history. He says, I want you to speak with your psychotherapist, and I want you to talk through these things. He's like, if we can't get you down, then we'll consider medicine. But he said something that made it click all for me. He said to me, it's okay that you're not okay. And it was the first time that someone made me not feel guilty for feeling, abused and neglected and questioning why I wasn't protected. I finally had someone who was telling me that, yes, you should have been protected. Yes, that is, that person's job. You shouldn't feel bad about, feeling that you should have done that. Those are your feelings to have. And as I began to talk through things and work through things and begin to reading my word more, there was a better understanding now of the word. I began to understand the full attack. The book of Job opened up so much more for me, because now I got it. I really, really got it. I really got it. It was just like, wow, I get, we as people of God and Christians, and I'm saying Christians because that's what I am. I'm a Christian. So I don't want anyone else to feel like I'm slighting you or anything like that. So please don't feel that way. So when I began to look at things, and I look at the points in my life when I was at high points, and then I would come crashing down, but I still served him. Because in my mind, it didn't make any other sense not to serve him. Did I fall off? Yes, I did. Did I sometimes just didn't go because, people at church hurt me, or, they would mistreated me and abused me? Yes. There was times that I walked away? Absolutely. But I continued to press forward. So, just in the last 2 years, I was at a really, really high place. I thought nothing could touch me. But then what happened is that I kind of forgot who was keeping me, because I got so comfortable. And then I feel like, I can hear, Satan like, there she go. Watch. Let me have her. Let me have that. Just let me have it. I guarantee you she's going to walk away this time. Yeah, I didn't. And the reason why I didn't is because when God restores, he restores and opens doors that I couldn't even imagine. 2 months ago, if someone had told me that I would even be doing this, or on Periscope, even speaking about this, I would have never believed you. If 2 months ago, someone said to me, even a year ago, not even a year ago, if a whole month ago, 30 days ago, 2 weeks ago, someone told me that I would have the opportunity to host my own radio show, speaking on these issues, helping others with these issues, I would have never believed you. A year ago, if someone said the place that you're going to be in, it may seem like a low place, but he's opening doors and the businesses is beginning to flourish and things are beginning to happen, I would have never believed it. But I've always stayed the course. Have I fallen off? I'm going to say that again. Yes, I have. I have not physically been in a church in 2 years, because the last one I was a part of was excuse me, it was so emotionally damaging to me that I just backed up. And I was just like, I need to really just reconnect with God and find out where he wants me to be and take all of these burdens off. And, I had picked up drinking again really heavily, things like a Magnum bottle of wine a day. I'm not even going to lie. I'm being real transparent, because I need somebody to understand that these are the things that happens when in your life. Just because you say you're a Christian and you're saved and you're serving, these trials and these tribulations, they happen. The things, you fall off, you slack up, you back up, they happen. That doesn't mean he doesn't love you. Marvin Sapp, in his, song, when he says, he is mine, I'm his, it doesn't matter what I did. He only sees me for who I am. That's the song, He Saw the Best in Me. And, he was writing that song about his father. And when you think about God, he's yours, you're his. It doesn't matter what you did. He only sees you for who you are. And for who you are is for what he's purposed you, what he predestined you for, what he planned your life for on this earth. When you say testimony, you have to break that down. Testimony, there's a test in it. There's a test, that you have to go through to get to the testimony, meaning the telling of the story, the showing of where it comes from. It doesn't mean that you're just floating on this earth. Sometimes it does feel like you are. Sometimes it's just like, Lord, what is going on? Why am I going through these things? And it's not a lot of the trials and tribulations that you're going through is for you, but it's always for someone else. You have people watching you that you don't even know that are watching you. I know I have people watching me that I don't even realize that's watching me. They want to see what my day-to-day is. They want to see how I say certain things. And what I've learned to do is to be careful with my words, choose my words. Yes, I do have my days, and some, I have friends. One time, I think the one time I just completely just lost it on Facebook, and I had friends reach out to me and was like, okay, what is going on? Because I'm usually a little bit calm and collected when it comes to social media. But there was a trigger that happened, and I had to face it. I had to deal with it, so you're going to have those things. So the scripture that I put into the title is from Romans 8:28. This is one of my favorite scriptures. I'm reading from the King James Version, and it says, as we know that all things work together for the good of them that love God, and to them who are called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestine to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he predestined, then he also called, and whom he called, he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. So when you think about all the things that you're going through, he knew that we were going to go through these trials and tribulations. Jesus was tested. If Jesus was tested, who's his own Son, who came down in flesh to carry our burdens, risk him being, away from his Father, and his Father turning on him to take on our burdens. If he was tested, we're going to be tested. What he did on earth was to show us how we can go through it. He got angry. He got upset. He showed all of those human emotions, but he did it all in love. And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on learning how to exhibit those emotions, but be loving in it. I can be upset, but I don't have to. There's a way you can say something to someone to be like, you really hurt my feelings. And hopefully you didn't mean it, but that hurt my feelings. And when you say something hurt your feelings, tell them how it hurt you. Because if you don't address it, it can't be fixed. And that doesn't mean if you can't do it right then and there, don't do it right then and there. Because then if you're angry and you do it, and then you come back later after you calm down, that person's not going to receive it. So walk away. I learned I had to take anger management classes. Those classes are wonderful. If you need them, go for it. What that helped me to do was to learn trigger points, to know when I could had enough, when I couldn't handle it by myself, when I had to walk away and take a breather, or put some good gospel music on, or pick up my word. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, I love all music. And sometimes if I had to put some rap on, some jazz, whatever I needed to do to get to recenter and refocus so that a conversation could be had that was productive, that's what you do. God has made all of these resources available to us. He has imparted wisdom and knowledge on the people that's providing it. So we need to begin to take full advantage of what he has allowed us to have a part of, so that we can be full functioning, productive members of this earth, to really begin to walk in our purpose and live for him, and to do the things that he wants us to do. His goal is for us to have life and have it abundantly, so that we can provide inheritance for our children and our children's children and our children's children's children, from generation to generation. So we need to come out of that. We need to just be broken all the time. No, we don't. Being broken has a time and a place. Time and a place. It is not all the time. And so one other one that I began to really quote myself when I decided that I wanted healing, that I wanted to be whole, and to begin to do that, the walk, is John 5:6. And basically this was, the man by the pool. And he was saying, he had been there forever. And he was just like, when, I want to be whole and I want to, get whatever, but no one can take me. And chapter 5, verse 6 says, when Jesus saw him lie, and he knew he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto them, wilt thou be made whole? And what God is asking at times is that, do you want to be good? Do you want to be okay? Do you want to really begin to live your life and walk in this purpose? And sometimes, not sometimes, okay, I'm talking about me. Most of the time, it was like, yeah, I want to be whole, but right now, I want to beat her up. Right now, I want to tell him and give him a piece of my mind. Right now, I do, but no, you got to let me handle that because I got to get with them. And that's not what God is saying. When he's asking us, do we want to be whole? He's asking us, are we willing to allow him to step in and do what he needs to do? And are we willing to go through the steps, the motions, whether it's seeing a therapist, going through anger management classes, being healthy or being whatever? Are we willing to do the steps so that we can walk in a productive life? And when I made that decision about my mental health, now there's various aspects of being whole, I had to effectively make that decision about my mental health. I could no longer be angry at a woman who didn't know how to raise me or love me because she didn't know I was asking for something that she couldn't give. I was asking for protection when I found out years later that she herself as a child had been sexually abused. So I'm asking for something that she could never give. I'm staying angry because I'm feeling like I deserve to, whatever, but she couldn't give it to me. And what I thought was the biggest letdown and the biggest hurt is when she walked away from us. That was the best thing she could have ever done. Now, of course, you don't understand as a child at 8 years old. Why? Because even though she was abusive, she was still, my mom. You don't understand why, she walks away. But 20 plus years later, I get it. It was probably that one lucid moment when she wasn't on those drugs and she says, I gotta let him go. That was the best thing that she could have done. And the time, that she couldn't do anything else. She probably is like, I can't raise them, not the way they want to be. And you know what? And she may have said, I don't want them to have the life that I had. So she let us go. Of course, it took many years to understand that. And sometimes we have to let go of those past hurts. Sometimes God allows death in our lives. Like he'll take parents away, or friends. He has to remove that person or that situation so that we can move on to the next level because we're so in that muck. Because had my mother still been alive, I'd have still been looking for that answer. I'd have still been like, why? And I'm looking for an answer that she couldn't give me because she didn't know herself. So my question to you is, what is it that you want to do to be whole? What are the steps are you willing to take? What are you willing to take off? Because the mask has to come off at some point. It can be, you're angry at that girlfriend who you think stole your man. It could be your brother. It could be your sister. It could be your auntie. This is what I tell anyone that is having problems with other people. I had problem with women because the one woman in my life that was supposed to cover me betrayed me at an age. And so I learned that they couldn't be trusted. And once I identified that, and I identified that women are not evil and they're not, all of these things, I began to adjust how I spoke. So now when I, hear women and they're going through whatever, what I go through now is the first thing I ask is, what happened to them as a child? Who broke their heart? So whoever you have, if you have an issue with, if you have an issue with women, myself, ask yourself this question. What was the first woman that broke your heart? It could have been that auntie who was your favorite auntie. It could have been that, girlfriend that you liked. It could have been a sister. The first woman that broke your heart. And once you trace that back to that, then you can understand how you relate to other women. And the same thing for men. Who was the first man that broke your heart? And this relates to men or women. Who was that first person that broke your heart and broke your trust? And then you can identify and dig out where that leads to. Because until you get to the core, until you're really to do the work, trust me, the work is hard. It's been 4 years since I've been in counseling, and I go all the time. And sometimes, depending on high stress seasons, I'm an accountant, so I have to up my appointments because stress, that's another way the enemy tries to get in. Oh yeah, this is stress season. I can wiggle in. So sometimes I need to, talk to someone who has that particular best interest and can say, you know what, Juanita, you're thinking a little too much about that. Or yes, you're justified in thinking that way, but let me help you think of it another way. No. So I pray that this Testimony Friday was a blessing to you, that you got so much out of it. My goal always is to impart wisdom and knowledge and to just be transparent in my story. Of course, there will be more about my particular journey in a little bit more detail, but just know that it is a process. It's a progress and a process. I am still a work in progress. I can say that the last week has been a great week. He's opened up some doors. I've been seeing how he's working in my life. I'm a little bit more grounded in my studying. Those things, I'm identifying things more now. And so it's a good week for me, and granted, again, like I said, we have those, down weeks, but don't beat yourself up about it. Don't say, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to be saved and I'm not supposed to feel this way. If you need to speak to a mental health professional, please do so. If you need to speak to a life coach, do so. Whatever it is that in the journey in which you're trying to take and move forward, seek out those professionals that are trained and licensed. And notice what I said. I said trained and licensed. And yes, pray over the people you're looking at and searching for, because God is going to direct you to those that can help you move forward in the purpose in which He has for you. But they're there for your utilization. They're there for you to grow and to prosper. So don't feel bad that you're doing it. Don't feel bad that, you're going to be less than. And if you have people around you that try to convince you that you're less than because you have to use a therapist, then you don't need those people around you. I cannot speak on anyone's ministry and where you're, attending and worshiping, but you should never be made to feel less than because you have to seek the help of a therapist or a specialist or a life coach. That is what God created them for. He gave them that knowledge. He gave them that specialty to help you. So I want to thank you guys so much for listening and following. If you are interested in joining the Pink Pulpit, please send an email. Can someone put the email in? Let me see if I can grab the email. so that we can get more of you on. This is a wonderful collective of women in Christ who is looking and searching to spread the word and the gospel in their own unique way. We all have, unique ways of doing things. So therefore, we need more who have their own, way of giving things and, speaking on things and how you want to, portray that. Again, everyone has their own way. Everybody has their own testimony. So that is going to be info@pinklovecrusade.info. I will try to type that in before I go. Maybe I can't. Can I get somebody to type that in? If not, we'll follow up with it. But if you're interested, please send an email to, info@pinklovecrusade.info. We are always looking for those to join the ranks to help spread the gospel and the word. And, if you're a gentleman who would also like to do so, send an email as well. Yes, we are women who are doing this, but if you're a man of God and you want to, impart some wisdom and some knowledge out there and to have others seek you, definitely do so. Okay. Thank you so very much again. Love you so very much. I am blessed and honored that you take the time out to listen to me and to hear me expound upon my story and the word. And it's going to be a wonderful weekend. I know for most of you it's a long weekend, so enjoy the weekend. Be blessed, be safe, and I will see you next week. Goodbye, goodbye.